Hello, my friends, and welcome to the Talking Cryptocurrency podcast. I'm your host, Jason Rigdon. On this episode of the show, we're talking to Federico Ast of Kleros. Kleros is trying to provide fast, secure, and affordable arbitration for virtually everything. They're using some really interesting game theory and the blockchain to do this. This is a really interesting idea and a great interview, but first, I've got this quick message. Hello, if you like this episode and you want to hear more like it, please make sure you subscribe to the podcast. That way you'll get every single episode. The Talking Cryptocurrency podcast is available on all podcast clients. You can subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Pocket Cast, Stitcher, Spotify, or wherever else you listen to podcasts. And if podcasts aren't your thing, I publish video versions of these interviews on YouTube and DTube, so you can subscribe there too. All the links to all that stuff is going to be in the show notes. So please, if you want to hear more of this show, subscribe. Hello, and on today's episode, I'm here with Federico Ast, CEO of Kleros. How are you today?
Good. Thank you for having me, Jason.
Yes, of course. So could you tell me a little bit about the problem you're trying to solve with this product?
Sure. So Kleros is an online dispute resolution platform that uses blockchain to solve different types of dispute that arise in the global economy, right? And so imagine we have this economy that in the past years has become more globalized and more digitized. Lots of new types of disputes are arising, right? For example, imagine I hire some freelancer from the Philippines or Indonesia or some other country to build a website for me. And now there is a dispute, so we do an agreement, and there is a dispute about the scope of the project. And so I'm not going to the Philippines to sue the guy in court and try to claim my money back for like a $500 suit. So imagine if I, instead of paying him directly, I can put the money into a smart contract. I send it into the contract, and we both agree that if there is a dispute, so this is going to be solved at Kleros, right? So the dispute starts and money stays locked there, and we both now have to put some extra funds to pay for the jurors. And so Kleros is going to select a number of jurors of like people who are experts in websites, and they know how to analyze the evidence, and they know how a website should be done. And they're going to see the evidence, and they're going to see the product, they're going to see the contract, and then they're going to say, okay, according to this contract, Federico is right, so the money into the escrow funds that stayed locked there is going to be sent back to me. So this solves a problem that currently is not solved in this global economy. No arbitration method is good for this type of disputes. And the only alternative is like using the service of some very large website, like some eBay, that they have the customer service, but that's not very reliable. So that's the vision that we have and the place we want to have in the ecosystem.
And you're solving this with the jurors. How do people get selected as jurors?
So that's a good question. The name Kleros comes from the Greek word that means chance, right? So jurors are going to be selected randomly, and in order to be selected, they need to use a token that's called pinakion, and that's the name comes from the name that the ancient Greek had for the token that they used to be selected for jurors in trials. So, the Greek had this concept of like peer-to-peer justice, that every citizen had the right to be a judge. So imagine you are like a website developer from Kenya, and you work, you have a work as a job as a developer, and then you want to make some extra money by arbitrating disputes about website development. So you need to get this token, and then you stake the token into a court of websites dispute in Kleros. So imagine that you have like 1,000 people who stake the token into this court, and the token gives you the opportunity to be drawn as juror. So of these 1,000 people, maybe 3 jurors are drawn, and these 3 jurors will have the right to analyze the evidence and to vote who is right in the dispute. and they are going to collect a fee for arbitration for their work in this the dispute. So they are randomly selected among all those who stake the token to be jurors.
But are these jurors like kind of, you said, I think they're experts in a certain field?
So they are like not vetted experts, but they self-select into the court where they claim they have an expertise to solve the dispute. And there is a quite sophisticated incentive system for jurors who are like, if you stake your token to be selected into like a quantum mechanics court, and you don't know anything about quantum mechanics, so there is a system of incentives that will make you lose money, because since all jurors who are experts are going to vote like one thing, and you're going to probably vote differently because you don't know about the subject, so you're going to lose the token that you have staked to be chosen, and so this is going to be sent to the jurors who voted in a coherent way. And so in the long run, people who try to game the system by selecting into like courts that they don't have experience, so they're going to lose money. And people who stake token into the course where they do have experience and expertise, so they're going to make money. So the system is structured in such a way that people who try to game it are going to be eventually eliminated from it, because they are not going to have the incentive to keep trying to game it. Everything is like based on this concept by Thomas Schelling, the Nobel Prize in Economics 2005, concept of Schelling point, and so that's a complex game theory concept. But yeah, so it's like that's the incentives, how they work.
And the parties in conflict, how do they make their arguments to the jurors?
Oh, so when you and I have the dispute about the website, for example, I say that you didn't do the job as expected, and so I submit a claim to the platform, and then so the evidence is already there, and so and then the contract is already there, and I say, okay, look, Jason, I can submit a report. Say Jason did not comply with point 4 and 5 of the contract because he did not design the buttons of the website in the way we had agreed. So I want to be reimbursed. So that's how it would work, and you could like eventually have the opportunity to answer to my report, and then it's for the jurors to decide.
And so I think we've addressed how we ensure that you wouldn't have partisan jurors. Like some people might be always on the side of maybe the larger business, but with that, was the Schelling point system you said?
Yeah.
That kind of prevents that.
So the incentive of jurors is to try to vote as the majority. So the problem that you have for in existing systems like customer support systems like eBay and like existing centralized systems for dispute resolution, that's like the problem, because that's not really a justice system. That's more like a customer support service where the incentive of the company is try to side with the with the big guy, right? What's the party that in the long run provides more revenue to the company, and so that's what they usually select for arbitration. So in this scheme of Kleros, you have people who are like chosen from everywhere, and you don't have like a boss in the company telling them, if in case of there is a doubt, you should side with the big guy because they make more of our revenue. So the guys are going to vote completely in an independent way. They are going to analyze the evidence, and so in this way, we expect them to be more fair than whatever other method exists now. It is also worth mentioning that this is a very new technology. Like no one has ever done this before, like using Schelling point game theory principles for arbitration. So a lot of this is going to be learned along the way, and how this works, and what's the best way to structure the incentives for producing the results that we want. So so that's the vision, and then a lot of the execution, a lot of the incentive optimization is going to be learned as we iterate.
And is the system live right now?
Yes, there is a pilot that we started doing with a very silly case that is like jurors. There is a dispute between between two parties where one says that one picture is a dog and the other says that it's not a dog. So, and we have jurors to have to decide, okay, this image is a dog or is not a dog. It's like a very like silly use case, but it's useful for testing how the incentives work. And we intentionally send like attacks. We try to bribe the jurors and try to see how they react to different images. And so what if we put an image of a photoshopped cat/dog thing? So this is already live. You can see it in the website dodgesontrial.dog, D-O-G. And you can, if you want, you can submit images for jurors to analyze and vote on, or you can participate as a juror in the platform. So this is live on the Ethereum mainnet.
So what have been some of the challenges of developing this project?
So the main challenges, so I guess what we are doing is that, so there is a challenge that is common to all of the crypto ecosystem. That's everything here is new technology and everything is like development is hard because, it's very new. In our case, so we have on the one side the computer science challenge, that's common to other projects, and also the challenge of the economics point of view, because in the end, the problem we're trying to solve is about incentives for people to work in an honest way in a decentralized system, right? So in a way, so the challenge that Satoshi Nakamoto had when we invented the Bitcoin, it was, how do you make all these computers collaborate, or anonymous computers collaborate in maintaining this ledger of distributed information? So in a way, we are facing a similar game theory challenge, is how do we make all these jurors who are distributed and they are anonymous to vote honestly and to arbitrate honestly a lot of different types of disputes. So that requires a lot of research, a lot of experiments. So in the end, I have to say that we are a science team. So we have this scientific challenge of incentive building. Big part of the team is scientists. I have a PhD in deliberative democracy, so how people organize to make decisions together and how collective intelligence work. We have a crypto economics researcher who is researching how to build a system that is resistant to attacks by malicious agents who might want to bribe jurors or to free ride the system. So the challenges come from the point of view mostly of the economics point of view. And finally, there is another challenge that is a bit like, so mankind is used to arbitrate disputes in courts, and this type of method and this type of incentives for judges. And so bringing this new method for arbitration, of course, some people are going to say, this is very weird. What do you mean that people from the internet can arbitrate disputes? And how do you make sure that they are not a mob justice kind of system? I guess that this requires a bit of mental software update, in a similar way that when people used to say that, Wikipedia, so how can you build a trusted encyclopedia using anonymous people from the internet? That's going to be full of garbage. Still, Wikipedia worked. We think that eventually Kleros will work, and then we will be able to say, see, we were right at the beginning.
So on an average conflict, when it's being resolved by the jurors, how many jurors are on that kind of pool?
So that's going to be decided by the by the parties who have the dispute before having the dispute. So you and I made a contract, and so we say, okay, if there is a dispute, this is going to be solved by 3 jurors, for example, or 5, depends on the case. But the optimal thing would be to have it solved by like the least amount of jurors, because that's going to be more efficient economically. So if you have like 3 jurors, it's like less expensive than have it by 5 or by 7. So the question is, what's the least amount of jurors that is enough for making a correct ruling? And that's something that we are researching now.
And any idea of how long it would take in time?
That would depend on the type of dispute. I told you about the case of the website, but other like dispute that can be solved in Kleros. So Kleros is a general purpose court that can be used for different type of disputes, like in insurance, small claims of different types. Like there are lots of use cases. So that would depend, and the average time would depend on the amount, on the type of case. But generally speaking, it should be like much faster and cheaper than any other method, because if Kleros becomes a very important global platform, you will have like thousands of jurors participating every day in arbitration. So if you have that very big amount of people willing to arbitrate, you have like this very big supply of arbitration services. So it could become like a kind of Amazon Turk, a mechanical Turk for arbitration, where so since you have so many jurors, so the cost and the time will go down a lot, and it could go down like so much that some disputes that today don't go to arbitration because it's just not efficient economically, they become they can go to arbitration, right? And so that could change lots of things and give opportunities to lots of people from countries emerging economies to participate in the global economy, because now you don't hire the guy from Uganda because you don't really have a way to make sure that if he doesn't do his job, you can so you don't have any way to recover your money. But if Kleros works at very low price point, so then yes. So that's what we are trying to build.
And are the jurors anonymous, or can they be identified?
So they are pseudonymous. So no, they don't have to reveal their identity for participating.
Okay. And then those conflicts, is there like a history? So like that, in our example of that web designer, kind of look up and see what conflicts that web designer may have been involved in?
So the from the point of view of the parties, so that's going to happen into the e-commerce platform. For example, you have when you hire the web designer, so it's like Upwork, for example. So you see every participant or every user in the platform, and you can see their reputation, and then you can see maybe this person has been involved in like X amount of conflicts. So but that happens in the e-commerce platform. So from the point of view of Kleros, so imagine the e-commerce platform, you hire the developer or the designer there, and then you agree with the designer. So in case of dispute, this goes to Kleros, right? But all the information about the parties, that happens into the e-commerce and not in Kleros. Kleros only handles the part of the dispute resolution. So it's going to become like a very big decentralized the platform for arbitration, to which different other platforms are going to be like connected by like sort of speak outsourcing the arbitration, right? So that's how it's going to work. So the information about the parties, so that's something that happens into the customer platform.
And so what other plans do you have for this project in the future?
So we just launched the mainnet, the mainnet product a couple of weeks ago. Now what we are doing is, as I told you, testing how this works, testing the incentive system, testing how it works, and then the next milestones are trying to use it in real use cases in some partners we already have in e-commerce platforms, for example, there are others that are derivatives trading platforms, and so it's like trying to implement this in real use cases where it solves real problems. Because now it's the pilot we are doing now is just a fake dispute pilot that we did with the dogs, and of course, then trying to improve the incentive system for Kleros to be able to adjudicate more disputes. Now it only works for like the dispute between two parties. But what happens if the dispute has three parties? So in that case, the shelling point mechanism is like harder. It doesn't work the same way. So we need to work on that. And then, of course, try to implement a number of features that we see that are demanded by partners that they need. For example, some of them want having courts where they can whitelist jurors, so not everyone can participate. So there are different features that we need to implement in the future.
It's a really interesting way to solve the problem of dispute resolution. Is there anything that I maybe should have asked you that I missed?
I think that you did a quite thorough job of asking questions. So yeah, it's different. So it's different in the same way that Wikipedia was different from the way that we used to do encyclopedias, and different from the way that Uber does transportation, and different from the way in which Yelp does recommendations of restaurants. And it puts the power in the hands of the people. It crowdsources the resolution. So in this sense, it's different.
It's very, very interesting. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Thanks, Federico, for coming on the show. Kleros could be a huge deal. Dispute resolution is a huge pain. It takes way too much time and way too much money. I really hope you can help with that. If you want to learn more about Kleros, check out the show notes. I've got all links right down there. You've been listening to Talking Cryptocurrency Podcast. My name is Jason Rigdon, and I have been your host. Thanks for listening to the show. If you liked it, would you please consider giving us a rating and review on iTunes? I look forward to talking to you again soon. Have a great day.